Hello and welcome to Woodlap Distillery, home of Symphonia Spirits, where science in tune with nature produces a symphony of flavours. Today I'd like to explain how we use science in our gin making, using the microwave still coupled with a rotary evaporator. So we distill our botanicals individually under the best conditions for that particular botanical. That gives us a super concentrate. And we add these super concentrates to a large volume of ethanol and water. So it's a multi-shot taken to the nth degree, and it's super efficient. It uses only 2% of the energy of a traditional still. Why? Because we minimise the amount of alcohol and the amount of heat that we need to extract by distillation the particular flavours that we're trying to get. So number one, we need to understand the chemistry of the molecules that we want to extract. And so we carry out gas chromatography coupled with mass spectrometry. And here's an example in the slide where we've got juniper. And you can see the various peaks that go from left to right, separated via their volatility. Each of those peaks then gets analysed via mass spectrometry, which is essentially facial recognition for molecules. You can then determine the identity of the molecules. Once you've got the identity of the molecules, then you can make an educated guess about its physicochemical parameters that it would have. And the three key parameters that you would need to get knowledge of or to estimate is volatility, solubility and stability. So volatility, where is it most likely to be prominent in the distillation? Is it at the beginning, the middle or the end? And therefore you can decide on where to cut. From the solubility, is it going to be more soluble in a high ABV or in a low ABV? So if it's a lipophilic molecule, so a fat-loving molecule, it would dissolve better at high ABV. If it's a water-soluble molecule, then you would extract it at low ABV. And then the third property is stability. Will it fall apart on heating, or will it indeed transform to another molecule which would have a different taste on heating? And so these are the factors that you need to take into account when designing the particular conditions for the extraction of the botanical. Here's a great example in the slide, the effect of heat on ginger ale, which is found in ginger root. Now ginger root, when you distill it cold, gives a nice citrus flavour. Now on heating ginger ale, it undergoes two chemical transformations. One's dehydration to produce showgole, which is a more potent, spicy taste, or it will undergo a retroaldol reaction. I never thought I'd say retroaldol reaction to some gin makers, but it undergoes a retroaldol reaction to produce syngerone, which is a sweet and spicy taste. So you can go in the effect of heat, going from a more citrus taste to one which is more gingeristic taste, just with the effect of heat. So once we've understood those particular physicochemical properties, we can then look at the distillation parameters. So the parameters are the temperature in the still. So higher is good for solubility, but it's not good for stability, and it's not good for energy efficiency. So the temperature in the still, it's a balance that you have to find. The ABV in the still, so what's the volatility of your molecule, where are you going to take the cut to have the most concentrated flavour and the most efficient extraction, and obviously determining what fractions you would need to collect. So let's talk about rotary evaporator. So this is found in most chemistry labs, and it's used normally to remove solvents from a mixture. In here though, we have juniper berries. They've been ground up to a nice fine powder to increase the surface area of extraction. And as you can see, you've got a really thick slurry. And that's the advantage of a rotary evaporator, in that it uses gravity to stir the contents of the flask. By mounting it at this angle, it then allows something as thick a slurry as this to be distilled without having any issues. There's no way you would do this in a traditional still. The other advantage to this is that you can completely control the temperature of the distillation by setting the vacuum in the flask for whatever setting you want. If you want to do it at atmospheric pressure and therefore normal distillation temperatures, you can. If you want to distill at low temperatures, then again it's just by modifying that pressure can you modify the temperature in the flask. And as we've spoken about before, that's key to any extraction. The other advantage of this is that you can set this to reflux, so you could actually reflux this juniper for a period of time if you wanted to carry out some transformation using the heat, for example. And the final excellent use for a rotary evaporator is because this is under vacuum. What you can do is you can feed in fresh solvent, fresh ethanol, into the flask using this tube here. The ethanol goes into here, but at the same time it's distilling out the lovely extract that you've got. So the ethanol and the extract is coming out here when fresh ethanol has been added. And if you look at the schematic on this slide, you can see how that can be used to effectively increase the volume of the flask, of the still, by this semi-continuous distillation process. Okay, we've talked about the theory of extraction by distillation, and we've talked about the rotary evaporator that we use. Let's cover a specific example. So I've taken juniper berries, I've smashed them up in a mill to reduce their particle size to a minimum so that I can maximise the extraction by ethanol water. And I've chosen the temperature that I feel is optimum for the distillation I want to carry out, which is 180 millibars. And what I've done is I've refluxed this for an hour, so that just to maximise some of the initial extraction by ethanol, but also to carry out some interesting transformations to give me some additional flavours from the juniper. So what we do now is drop it. This would normally be in the water bath, heating. The ethanol water would heat up into the condenser, condense down, and it would end up in the receiver. Once the receiver was full, you can close this off, remove this receiver, empty it, put it back on, reopen this, so you can continue to take out more and more ethanol. And what I'm doing here is feeding in fresh ethanol, and I've put here, just to show you, the red pipe here. So the ethanol comes in from the tub into here, down here, into the flask, and then that will extract more beautiful flavours, and those will then be collected in here. So it's a fantastic way to maximise the size of your still. And interestingly, what you can also do is just to gradually change the ABV of the fresh ethanol water that you're adding, and that can give you some very interesting, almost chromatographic type separations from your distillations. But when all's said and done, there's one thing that you can't change, and that's the size of the still. And here we've maximised the size of this still with the juniper we have in there. And that's where the microwave comes in really useful. So I've taken the apparatus out of the microwave, so it would normally sit in here, and there's a chimney out there that this comes out of, but it's good to show it all clearly out on the bench here. So we've got in here, I've put dry juniper, the same amount of juniper that is in here. And what I've done is I've heated that with the microwaves. So what the microwaves do, and any plant, fresh plant material contains water within the cells, and the microwaves excite those water molecules, making them hot. They burst out of the cells, bringing with them all the beautiful essential oils that are contained within the cells. The water continues to heat up, creates a vapour, and that vapour creates an effect which is hydrodistillation, so steam distillation. You just think of it really as the water molecules driving off the volatile oils that are in the juniper berries. So the vapour of water and oils comes up here, is condensed and runs down into this part of the apparatus. And what happens, the oils float on water, and the water, excess water, drains back into the still, keeping the juniper berries with water in them. And this here, I've run this for 20 minutes, which is all you need to do to extract this weight of juniper berries. And you can see we've collected about 1 millilitre of essential oils from that. That essential oil, although it doesn't look much, is enough for over 100 litres of gin. And that's the beauty of it, because it's just the essence of juniper here. And you've also noticed it's yellowed. So I did this distillation about 3 days ago, and during that time, the oil that sat there are elements within that oil that are decomposed with the air and oxidised, and that just shows you that it's brought out everything, all the flavours and essences of juniper. So the ones that you want, but also the ones that you don't want. So you still have to carry out a fractional distillation using ethanol and water as you would here, and that would go into here, but it's the same distillation that any gin maker would do with juniper, taking it and making cuts at the appropriate time. But what is fantastic about this is the way that it debulks the botanicals to give you the essence, and so therefore you can obviously put a lot more essence into this flask now to then carry out the distillation, done on a 75 litre scale, where they're extracting rosemary. And it's a similar apparatus to collect the essential oils as I'm using here, and you can see how incredibly efficient it is. So, you know, it looks easy in theory, but in practice, it takes a lot of practice to actually optimise your conditions for the particular botanicals. There are a number of variables you need to take into account. One thing I didn't mention is that you can modify this to run under vacuum. So if you've got some more delicate botanicals you want to extract the essential oils out of, you can do that. So I hope I've shown you that these two techniques combined together make a really, really efficient distillation process, and one that produces, if I do say so, some very fine gin. I think one thing that we need to be conscious of now, you know, the UK government did a survey in 2018 and worked out that the gin industry produces 77,000 tonnes of CO2 a year. And I worked it out, that's over 1.1 million trees a year. So, you know, it's worth us looking at using science and other things to really try and get that number down. So I'd like to thank the Gin Guild for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today. And I'd just like to leave you with one thought. You know, gin making isn't rocket science. It's far more complicated than that. Thank you.